Let's be realistic here, ladies and gentlemen. We don't know exactly which rookie wide receiver will be the next Hall of Fame level guy, will turn into the next Julio Jones. We don't know exactly which rookie wide receiver is going to turn into the next Laquan Treadwell. But what we can do is we can get in depth with these rookies, dive into their historical comparables as prospects, and look at the expected hit rate and look at the range of outcomes for a player with their profile coming into the NFL. And yes, you will see there's a reason I'm maybe a little bit lower on those round 2 guys than most people. Yes, you will see there's a reason why I love Jackson Smith-Njigba so damn much. But before we get into it, you better be hitting that like button. You better be subscribed if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, you better be on flockfantasy.com. We have a massive feature coming soon. We have exclusive merch. We have extra underdog credit going towards those members. We'll be making some very exciting announcements in about a week. But in the meantime, you can get all my updated rookie wide receiver rankings, all my updated rookie dynasty rankings, as well as all the updated rankings from your favorite Dynasty Fantasy Football creators. Plus, so much exclusive content. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you are going to get a free 2-day trial with promo code FLOCK. If you decide that you like it enough to make a purchase, you will get 30% off any subscription. And with promo code FLOCK in that Mother Flocker tier, yours truly will go through and break down your team in a podcast. But I think that should be about it. Let's go ahead and let's dive into these wide receivers. Very similar to what we did with these running backs, right? I mean, back about a week ago, right before the NFL draft, we put out a video outlining our wide receiver model, proving that it was significantly more predictive than historical Dynasty ADP at figuring out who we should be drafting in rookie drafts, who we should be avoiding in rookie drafts. And not only did we prove the model and show you that it actually works, we talked through why it works and exactly what we are looking for. So the main things we are looking for is the breakout season of the wide receiver. Does he break out as a freshman, sophomore, or junior? The dominance that he displays in his best season in college. Does he account for 33% of his team's passing yards on a per game basis? Does he account for 40% of his team's passing yards on a per game basis? The amount of wide receivers on his collegiate roster that season where he dominates that are drafted to the NFL at some point. Then on top of it, obviously, we have some small marks like their athletic testing numbers, like their NFL draft capital. That's actually a pretty big one, but the small marks are more so going to be their athletic testing numbers, their size. You already watched that video. So here's what our model spits out now that we have the official draft capital for these guys. Starting off with Jackson Smith-Njigba, very similar to Bijan Robinson. It's green only here, ladies and gentlemen. It's green only, indicating we're making some money here with this player. I know it looks ridiculous, right? I understand you're saying, Mason, you're saying that he scores, in the same range as Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins, Calvin Ridley. Yes, I am saying that. We wrote an article about this on flockfantasy.com, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago now. And if we were looking at how Jackson Smith-Njigba scores this high, right? Because I understand y'all probably don't remember, but you got to trust me on it. Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins, while yes, they were never top 5 wide receivers in fantasy, they were elite level prospects. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. If Sammy Watkins had his career play out the way that everybody thought it was going to, he would be a Hall of Fame level wide receiver. Of course, so much off the field stuff happens we don't need to get into. But nonetheless, the reason you are seeing the dominance here is if we were looking at a player like Jackson Smith-Njigba, well, he gets drafted in round 1 of the NFL draft. He dominates with a 32% market share number at Ohio State. He is fast enough. He is big enough. He declares early for the NFL draft and breaks out as a sophomore. That is all normal, right? And if you do that at Arkansas in your Treylon Burks, while it's impressive, it's not like you're a truly generational wide receiver prospect. The reason he pops so much in our model, just like the reason Garrett Wilson popped off so much in our model last year, is the amount of wide receivers that will be drafted to the NFL the season Jackson Smith-Njigba dominated. That season, you had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and another top 10 wide receiver or a top 10 NFL draft pick in the 2024 draft on that Ohio State roster. So he has a phenomenal prospect profile to begin with. But then once you put in the level of top competition he was going up against and adjust his market share numbers accordingly, that is what makes him truly special. That's why also you add Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson popping off in our models, their rookie seasons, because at LSU, you also had absurd wide receiver competition to go up against. That's why you had Calvin Ridley popping off in this model. That's why you had Sammy Watkins popping off in this model. The guys that are those truly can't miss players are the wide receivers that dominate in the face of top competition on their roster in terms of the guys they're taking targets from. But let's go over to a massive teardrop, right? We're going from a can't-miss player in Jackson Smith-Njigba, who we actually got to interview, a humble brag, to Quentin Johnston. Now, with Quentin Johnston, the reason he's going to be ahead of Addison in our model is Addison's getting a small knock due to his size. Johnston doesn't have that knock, but they're both very comparable, right? And we talked about this time and time again. That's why I'm excited about both these players. They both break out as freshmen, dominate as sophomores, declare as juniors, and are round one picks in the NFL draft. That's what we're looking for, okay? It's hard to get that much better than that as a prospect. But naturally, unlike the running back position, wide receiver is going to be a little bit harder in general to identify those hits, those misses. So it's not like it's a guarantee Quentin Johnston is going to be great here, right? Like the guys that scored identical to him coming out of school, you had Jerry Jeudy, Tyler Boyd, Deebo Samuel, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore, George Pickens. The guys that scored slightly better include some massive hits. You have Odell, you have Evans, you have CeeDee Lamb on this list, indicating the insane ceiling Quentin Johnston has, but also some guys that were arguably some of the biggest draft day busts in NFL or fantasy football history in Corey Coleman and Jalen Reagor. Right below this, you have a mixed bag as well. You have some bust guys like Corey Davis, Devontae Parker. You have some massive hits such as Michael Thomas and Allen Robinson. So what you're seeing with Quentin Johnston, and almost the same thing with Jordan Addison, who's going to be slightly lower, about at a 32, as you're seeing, yes, these players have an elite ceiling in the range of outcomes. But unlike Jackson Smith-Njigba, they are not guarantees. They are not for sure fire studs, and it's almost impossible to find those guys at the wide receiver position. So here with Quentin Johnston, I'm completely fine drafting him at the 108, but we just have to be realistic with what we're looking at. And Jordan Addison, you see a similar thing, right? I mean, in his range, you still have Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson, Devontae Adams scored the same as well, but you also have some massive misses. You have Devin Funchess, Laviska Shenault, Josh Dotson, Sky Moore, Corey Davis, and then maybe you want to throw Devontae Parker in here. But almost regardless, you're seeing Johnston, Addison in a very similar range. These guys can be massive. They can be nothing. You're seeing something similar with Zay Flowers, where Zay Flowers, the difference between him and these other wide receivers in our model is you don't necessarily have like top 3 overall upside, right? You can still be a very strong wide receiver 1 in fantasy. You can still turn in to DK Metcalf, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you're not seeing the Michael Thomas #1 wide receiver season here. You're not seeing the Devontae Adams #1 wide receiver season. You're not seeing the Odell Beckham Jr. #1 wide receiver season. You're not seeing CeeDee Lamb top 3 at the wide receiver position in Dynasty. The ceiling may be a little bit more capped with Zay Flowers. You're maybe more so expecting like a Jahan Dotson, Mike Williams level player. But of course, you still have the bust in this range. You still have John Ross and Jalen Strong. You still have Cortland Sutton and Terrace Marshall before everybody goes down there and says, Mason, how dare you say Cortland Sutton's a bust? I'm sorry people lied to you and told you that he was a good wide receiver. He's literally never been a top 24 guy on a points per game basis. You should have known that Cortland Sutton's not good. But what's very interesting to point out, and the #1 thing that I want to highlight here, will be Marvin Mims. Yes, Marvin Mims somehow sneaks his way in here. Marvin Mims is a wide receiver that breaks out as a sophomore. Marvin Mims is a wide receiver that has a 32% dominator rating in his best season. Marvin Mims is drafted at the very end of the 2nd round. So it's an interesting spot in general. He's fast enough. He's big enough. He declares early. He has decent capital. He's productive enough given his offense. So I don't want to sit here and act like, oh, Marvin Mims is our next guy. To be honest with you, The situation is so bad that if you pull up my rankings on flogfantasy.com, you'll see, no, I don't have Marvin Mims over the other wide receivers that we're about to talk about in 1 second. But that's because you have guys going to Kansas City. It's because you have guys going to Green Bay. Marvin Mims' situation in Denver, no bueno. But still, if you were looking at Marvin Mims late second round, early third round of your Dynasty rookie draft, I am going to be fine taking the swing there. More likely than not, he is nothing. More likely than not, he does bust. But he is someone that, hell, scores surprisingly high, and it shouldn't be that much of a surprise if you just look at those boxes. Now, going to a big tier drop, I would really throw Marvin Mims in this tier. But you're looking at guys like Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Kayshon Boutte, Rashee Rice, and here you have a whole lot of red. I mean, you have so many draft day busts. If we want to include the Marvin Mims range, we have John Ross, Jalen Strong, Dorial Green-Beckham, Rashad Perriman, Anthony Miller, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, a horrible, horrible prospect. Diami Brown, Laquan Treadwell, Denzel Mims, Kevin White, Leonte Carew, James Washington, Henry Ruggs, Philip Dorsett, McCole Hardman. We have some massive, massive bust in this range. That's not to say these players can't work out. We had some other wide receivers scoring in the middle here around at 26 that were just fine in fantasy. We haven't seen yet the ceiling of Christian Watson. Maybe Christian Watson ends up turning out to be a phenomenal, phenomenal wide receiver. Right now, I'm scoring him as if he was able to accomplish a couple wide receiver 2 seasons. We'll see, but nonetheless, as it stands, you're seeing the hits in this range, such as Pittman, Ayuk, Hollywood, Christian Watson, not being comparable to the potential hits that you would have with the Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. Like with Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, it looks like those guys could turn into top 5 wide receivers in Dynasty, right? It looks like it's possible they bust. It's possible they turn into top 5 players. Here with these round 2 wide receivers we'll be looking at in rookie drafts, it's very, very likely they bust. And if they don't bust, they're going to be turning into wide receiver 2s. They'll be like Pittman, Ayuk, Hollywood. So it's just like, you're fine taking them, but just be realistic, right? Like, are we going to be super excited to draft Josh Downs at the 111? Probably not. But if we can get Marvin Mims at the 302, at the 211, yeah, I'm probably going to be really excited about that draft pick with this range of outcomes. Now, if I were to go through and rank these guys, because they all score so similarly, like I said, we're moving Marvin Mims down to this bucket. Rashee Rice would definitely be my guy. I mean, if we're just looking at him in general, this is a wide receiver that's going to play with freaking Patrick Mahomes. And I think if you are playing with Patrick Mahomes, we can overlook some of the red flags that we have on your profile. Now, a wide receiver that had a significant hit in our model was Jalen Hyatt. With Jalen Hyatt, I mean, this is about the range that we get to where there are no hits, right? Like Jalen Hyatt, the closest thing we have to a hit for him is going to be Sterling Shepard. Maybe throw Kadarius Toney in here. Like, as you can see, our model hated Toney. But nonetheless, I mean, just him falling in the NFL draft when he didn't have too many strong selling points on his overall prospect profile, it's a difficult sell if we're going to be honest with each other. If he was going to go round 1, if he went beginning of round 2, yeah, you'd score a lot higher than this and he would be up there probably around like 26, 27. But you'll see 22 and below, these are wide receivers that were being drafted in Dynasty rookie drafts since 2014. It is just bust after bust after bust. You have Jalen Hyatt, Jalen Tolbert, and then a bunch of rookies in this class, right? You have Parker Washington, Tyler Scott, Xavier Hutchinson, Cedric Tillman, Nathaniel Dell, like a bunch of rookies, and only bust elsewhere. You have Kelvin Benjamin. Maybe you could have sold him after his rookie season. Maybe you want to classify him as a hit. In reality, no, he's not good. Nico Collins, not good. Khalil Shakir, not good. Paris Campbell, not good. Hakeem Butler, horrible. Joshua Palmer, kind of a miss. Obviously not a good prospect, not really a good player, but just got to play with Justin Herbert. Alec Pierce, not good. David Bell, not good. So once we get past like Rashee Rice, Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Kayshon Boutte, immediately sell any of those other wide receivers for a second round pick in 2024. I may even be willing to sell like, say, Kayshon Boutte in a third to get back what we would maybe perceive to be an early second. I think that could be a move that we're looking to make as well. I just have no faith in those guys at the very bottom. If I had to pick someone on this list, it would be Cedric Tillman. But I think that's all I have for y'all. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you enjoyed it, please go down there, drop a like on this live stream, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, I can almost guarantee you that you are going to love flockfantasy.com. Go use promo code FLOCK, get a free 2-day trial. Go get all my updated Dynasty rankings. Go get all the updated Dynasty rankings of all your favorite content creators. But I think that's all we have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate you and really hope you have a great day.